I'm a rapper, I'm not a poet. Poet, I'm not a rapper. Guess it's opposite there, cause you niggas just got it backwards. Got me sick to my stomach. Go up on my lantern. New trios, Frio, the most terrible tandem. Deliver shock value, but no, not Timberlanding. Critical observation alerting you ambulances. Clap on and clap off. Rap on and rap off. Hard times for hard rhymes, that concrete, that asphalt. If I did look twice, I guess that's her asphalt. May I assist you and score, get my pass out. Matter of fact, it's what you need. Need some rest, you just fatigue. See, technically I'm filing Mrs. Wallace, I'm Rashid. Know this beat is a banger. Have no reason for anger. If I'm slightly deterred, you know I'm giving the finger. I'm a savage like Corey, but not in need of Topanga. Right like 90 degrees, you in the need of an angle.
Welcome to the Free Lunch Podcast. This is your boy Tight, and I got BG with me. What's going on, BG?
Oh, shucks now.
What's happening?
Yeah, what's happening then? How you feel, Tight?
Man, long day of work, late night podcasting. You know.
This is what we live for, the opportunity to get on these microphones and get some of this stuff off. It's what it's all about.
This the enjoyment and entertainment of the whole day for me. So, like I said before, very therapeutic for me. So, I'm ready.
You ready? I'm ready too, man.
What about
I'm ready
yourself,
to get this
though?
one going. Ready to go to work. What's up?
What about yourself, though? How you feeling?
I feel good, man. Ready to go to work. I put another episode together, get the people something to think about. So I'm feeling good. I'm feeling real good.
New South Movement.
New South Movement is in full effect. In full effect.
So, I mean, no further ado, I think we might as well just jump right into it and give the people what they want.
Let's get to it. Pop it off.
Got to give the people what they want. But that's not even it, though. You ready? So let me tell you what I'm gonna do on this one, though. So what I did was I'm gonna take a verse out of one of my favorites, and hopefully this one verse kind of summarizes what we're gonna be talking about today, and hopefully I can connect the dots with this verse. You ready?
Ready.
I'm rapping again.
Oh shit. Oh hell. Buckle up.
But you know what? You might not even. I don't even know if you heard this one before.
Man, go ahead. Let's hear it.
We work night shifts. We some vampires. Niggas gather around the beat like a campfire, singing folk songs, but not no kumbaya, my lord. You download it for free, we get charged back for it. I know you're saying they won't know, they won't miss it. Besides, I ain't a thief. They won't pay me a visit. So if I come to your job, take your corn on the cob and take a couple kernels off it, that would be all right with you. Hell no. Yeah, Zach the Mondo. That's all I'm gonna give him. I could have kept going.
Now you had more?
Oh man, I could have kept him going.
Nah, man, you did good.
But we just keep recording. It ain't to get no condo and candy painted Bentley fanning with no panties in Miami and that cool looking cami that we took to the Grammys. See, we do that for that boy that graduated, that looked you in your eyes real tough and say appreciate it, and that he wouldn't have made it if it wasn't for his CD number 9, and he's standing with his baby mama Kiki as she crying, talking about that they used to get high to me in high school and they used to make love to me in college. Then they told me about that first day listening to my tunes and how we like to fingernail polish. I say, hate to cut you off, but I gotta go. I wish I could tell you more, but I'm off to the studio. Gotta write tonight. Hey, could you put us in your raps? I don't see why not. Devin is the dude you gonna probably hear me talking about. What a job this is. You ever heard that one?
Yeah, man, go ahead. Tell the people what that is. That song you just gave us.
I got to give it to him. It's Devin the Dude featuring Snoop and also Andre 3000. Snoop, the D-O-double-G, and Andre 3000. The verse I just actually recited was 3 Stacks verse on that particular rap. But, man, that's one of my favorites.
The whole verse.
Yeah, I gave him the whole.
You gave us a full 16 on that one.
I mean, that wasn't the plan, but hey, you asked for it. So I had to
Man,
take it off the dome.
You right. You right. Good job. Good job.
So I don't know. You think we can relate that?
Yeah, I heard some things in there that are in line with what we're talking about today.
So if I come to your job, take your corn on the cob, and take a couple kernels off, that would be all right with you? Hell no. Exactamundo. That's actually what I wanted to kind of focus on for today's topic. Man, let's just go ahead and jump into it. So we're gonna talk about what? So hold up. I ain't even gonna tell them what we're gonna talk about. Let's give some background as to how we kind of came up with today's conversation, and really need to have some discussion because even though we're gonna use this example and this person kind of that's been pushing this whole agenda, I think this is relevant in just everyday life and throughout the history of just human existence. What you think?
It really does, and it's centered around getting into it. It's centered around just that thought that we often have when you stand back and look at certain situations, and you look. For us right now, you look at certain advertisements and promotionals and things like that, and you see bits and pieces of culture, mainly as it relates to us, hip hop culture. You see it in the music, and you see it in the clothing, and you see it in the dance, and you see these these elements being used to push products. So you ask the question, well, if these companies or these brands are using these elements from a particular community to push their products, are they giving back to those communities where they're getting these pieces from, or are they just using these pieces for their own personal gain with no intent on replenishing or putting back into the communities? And so you just think about, those times where you have ideas. You might have an idea on your mind and it's fresh. It's something that you feel really good about, and you present it to somebody else. And before you know it, they've made that idea their own, and they're running with it as if they came up with it. And then they're failing to give you credit or referencing you as the person that they got that initial idea from. And so this is all around us. And so that's the framework. And then there has been a rising of conversation going on centered around this whole the frequency of this occurrence and how often it's happening and how detrimental it is to certain cultures and certain communities in this world that we live in.
So let's just jump right into it. So both you and I, who've really taken this whole podcast platform and become connoisseurs and listeners of certain personalities, one in particular, the Comeback Jack Show, on the LSN Loudspeaker Network. And he had a very famous interview in which one of his most popular interviews, I say, in which he interviewed Damon Dash, who essentially, in a lot of ways, talked about culture vultures. And pretty much me using those two words, culture vultures, as a way to summarize exactly what you just said. During one of Comeback Jack Show episodes, and during the interview, he pretty much just talked about how some of the most popular radio stations, he singled out Hot 97 in New York, how essentially some of the, not so much the personalities, he actually went above them and just talked about how the CEOs and the ownership essentially was taking the hip hop culture and using it to benefit themselves and to pretty much make a living off of culture, that being the hip hop culture, and essentially using that for their gain. And Damon Dash was very intimate and very passionately spoke about how, he's against that, and rightfully so, with him being one of the pioneers and pretty much managing and working with one of the most popular and one of the most influential, one of the greatest rappers of our generation, of our lifetime, in Jay-Z. So in a lot of ways, him helping to move the culture and push the culture forward, and then to see outsiders, as he may have even coined it, or others come in and kind of pray and prow on something that was built from the ground up, essentially from Hollis, Queens, and from the ground roots there, and then have people come in and essentially trying to market and take over and benefit and make money off a culture that was started from those individuals.
Damon Dash being 1/3 of the founding parties of Rockefeller Records, him along with Jay-Z and Kareem Biggs. Burt founded a record company and grew that record company to where it became one of the biggest labels in the music industry, with one of the largest artists that we know to date in the hip hop realm. And so he has a lot of familiarity with the culture, of course, being a native of the city. And so he knows that part. And then he also knows the business part. And so he's been in the room with these executives. He's able to see some of the behind the scenes things that go on that we as consumers don't really see, that part that goes on in the boardroom when people are making decisions about what artist is going to go first, what artist is going to come out, what videos are going to be shown. And so he has some firsthand knowledge about that. And so for him, being one of those guys that was on the grassroots level, that understands the history of hip hop, he's taking strong offense to some of the product that's being put out now, and how a lot of the executives are taking advantage of the artists and their art form in terms of not paying them their worth and giving them screwed up deals. And then he's also passionate just about the quality of material that's being put out, that is being sold and being marketed as hip hop. And so the essence to him, of course, he is grown up in the game. The essence of it, what's going on now is totally different than what those guys set out and what they were speaking about in the earlier days. But really what he is really teed off about is just how you've got most of these top executives who are not from these neighborhoods that the music is coming from. They really don't have a true sensitivity of what's going on in the culture, don't really have a knowledge of the culture outside of the surface level stuff, outside of just the clothing and the sounds and the words that are coming out. And so they're not really in touch or in tune to what's going on. But at the same time, they're in some ways taking ownership of it. They're the ones that are packaging it up. They're the ones that are delivering it to the masses. They're the ones that are determining basically what is hip hop. They're the ones that are telling people that don't really have a knowledge of the history and the origin of it. They are the ones that are telling the youth what hip hop is, what it's supposed to be. This is what it looks like.
But this is what happens, but even taking a step farther, this is what happens when you don't understand and know your history. Because even with Damon Dash speaking out about it, I don't know if you caught the Chuck D interview on the Comeback Jack show, which essentially was piggybacking off of what Damon Dash had already said. But picture this: when you have Chuck D, one of the pioneers, that was really on the forefront of the hip hop movement and hip hop being established, and then him having outsiders come in and essentially try to tell him or try to dictate to him what hip hop is, that's totally backwards.
And called him and basically labeled him as irrelevant, irrelevant to the culture because he's not on the radio with Rich Homie Quan right now. They basically called him irrelevant to the culture. And you can't, that's disrespectful. That's like telling your elder, your granddaddy that he don't matter. You can't really do that.
You have no association to the culture, but from listening yourself to to albums that he influenced or even produced or he wrote. So I think in a lot of ways, even if you look at those individuals, um, whomever they may be at any radio station, but those powers that be that are controlling and trying to define what hip hop is, you have a lot of the younger generation that kind of buy into it. So they may think that this personality outweighs a Chuck D, who is a god of the movement.
Which negates the work and the effort and the blood, sweat, and tears that he put in on the front end at a time to where the music and the genre was trying to grow. It was breaking through. So you've got to give it up for your foundation and the people that paved the way and kicked the door down to make room for what's going on now. Even if they don't have an album out now, you still do respect to those guys and pay homage and never downplay them and downplay their contributions, which is what happens when you have people that are in these positions of being quote unquote tastemakers that don't come from the space, being the ones that are telling you what's hot and what's not. They only know half the story. And so they'll sell you on their half of the story. And if you're not wise, you'll be following down that road of ignorance as well. And so to go back to what you were saying, it's very important to know your culture for yourself, to know your community for yourself and really know it to where nobody else can tell you any different. And Lord Jamar, who from the brand Nubians has also spoken out about this a lot, and he kind of talked about it in terms of you having a house, as hip hop being a house, and how disrespectful it is for somebody to come in your house, tell you to move over and take your remote control and dictate what you watching on television, which is what it is.
I mean, so that's a great analogy, and that's exactly what it is.
You come into the house, so you've got to come into a place. If you're not familiar, if you're not totally of it, you've got to come in respectful and without the intent of trying to take it over and make it into your own.
Well, let me ask you this right here. And this actually is going to be a deeper dive into the conversation that was pretty much put out there by the Combat Jack show that we both listened to, and by Damon Dash, but just taking a deeper dive into that, eventually taking this conversation and expounding on how we see that in everyday life, whether it be at the job or whether it be throughout history, of how opportunists, as I like to call them, come in and essentially see something that has potential to grow and become an opportunist to pretty much take ownership of that to make a buck. And I don't want to say that it's so much so racism than it is classism, because for me, if you really think about it, you have people that are quote unquote business minded, or essentially trying to chase a buck to turn a dollar into to triple a dollar, what have you, whatever the saying is. So the question I got for you is, do you, and this is just coming from a devil advocate's perspective, do you fault, or what is the responsibility of the quote unquote business minded person that sees opportunity in a particular culture or in a particular idea or event or what have you? So what is their responsibility, since hip hop has a lot of potential, right? And it has a lot of growth from a marketing standpoint and from a dollar bill standpoint. So
this is where business and ethics meet. and as we know it, usually business is going one way and ethics goes in a totally different direction, because the bottom line is to get yours.
Right.
as it relates to what we're talking about in terms of this music culture, hip hop is one of the most captivating, diverse, and inclusive music genres that exist right now. Most other music genres like rock or country or whatever is somewhat isolated. It doesn't really transcend into different ethnic groups or different communities or social places and things like that. So it's marketable for that reason. The beat is what it is. The beat is catchy. There's some form of it for everybody, whether you like the slower, fun, upbeat, trap, hard. You got something for everybody.
But hip hop is even more than just the music.
It's the fashion that goes along with it. It's the swagger that goes along with it. Everything about it personifies cool and marketability. So that's why you see the commercials. Even the most lily white of commercials today will have some type of rap or hip hop thing, like the Best Buy. I mean, the Best Buy guy, dancing on there, like we dance when we go to the spot. So that's what it is. And so for a businessman, you know that, and you see that transcends and it broadens your demographic of who might be interested in your product. Naturally, you're going to go for it. You're going to embrace it and you're going to try to take it in. So, and once it gets to that point, there really is, for the most part, no concern for, well, are we doing this in the best interest of the community that we're getting this from?
Right.
That really, I would tend to believe that never comes across.
Even from the beginning, is that even a thought?
This sounds good. It's moving a lot of people. These guys are selling these records. They're on the radio all the time. Let's just go get the music that sounds like this. We can even get them. That'll be great. And just put them on the commercial. And that brings me to Steve Stout had that show and has it in his book, The Tanning of America, and he was talking about the Gap. If you remember that Gap commercial, they had LL Cool J on there.
Right.
LL Cool J was hot at the time. He was rapping. He did a rap during the commercial, but he had a FUBU hat on. So, and the Gap people didn't even realize it. So they just knew they had LL Cool J on the commercial, but he was on there advertising a brand that he was associated with in the in-between time. And this is on TV. This is an ongoing, running commercial, and they never even knew about it because they weren't in tune to the culture. They just knew the surface level.
Right.
So it never comes into their minds. Never comes to their minds. So, when they do these things, the bottom line is to get as much dough as you can, and no regard for if what we're doing is in the best interest of the community that we're basically stealing these elements from.
But I guess more along the lines of, is the consumer or the responsibility of the consumer to maintain the integrity and the pureness and the authenticity of, we've been talking about hip hop for the last 12 minutes or 20 minutes or so. So what role does the consumer have? And then I kind of want to transition, because I think this is a good segue to even take it deeper into like just everyday life, because I can personally personalize this particular topic and the experiences I've had.
So if you say the African American community,
but they don't know the history, though. They don't know the history.
I'll come from that because I'm a part of the African American community. As us being some of the most influential consumers, we consume a lot of products and things like that. We do. It has to matter to us to protect our culture, so to say. It has to matter to us to protect ourselves from these vultures. And so how we do that is to say, okay, well, we're not going to just consume any old everything. You're not going to take this, give us trash on the back end and expect us to support you. We have to do that as consumers if we care enough to protect ourselves from the vultures. We have to be willing to do our own stuff. We have to be willing to cut out the middleman and say that we're just going to do this on the strength of our, individually as well as with other members of the community. That way you ensure that what the presentation is 100% representative of where you come from and what you are. So there is some power. The consumer does have some power in terms of maintaining that integrity, but it's got to matter first. The integrity and the longevity of what you have and the possession of what you have has to matter to you before you can even make any strides in terms of protecting it. We go farther than that. We can go into something that's somewhat within the community. You like to talk about it, but say like that, our reality TV shows, and I'm sorry if I'm offending some of the listeners that like that. There's no problem with it, but it's kind of the same thing. It's like, that's a representation of who we are. It's a representation of how we live. Do we care about that representation being put out? Do we care about the fact that there might be some people that totally don't understand us, totally don't understand our inner thoughts and what we strive to be? They don't know that part.
And that piece right there is a totally different conversation that I can get on the soapbox and talk about for 45 minutes myself.
But they're also watching these things, and so some of that can dictate how they relate to you. So you've got to care. You got to care before you do anything.
And their perception of what's important to us,
right? Because right now they think that the only thing that most people or some people think that the only thing that matters to us is money, cars, fame, sex, women, fighting, those type of things.
100% agree. And to me, this isn't a racism thing. This is a classism. To me, you have two groups of people that essentially the haves that kind of view themselves as being that 5% or that 1% that kind of control and make the decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have that quote unquote business mindset or what have you. And then you have those that don't fall. You have the other that don't fall into that category. And so that small percentage kind of sees everything as a business opportunity. And so they go out and try to make $1 and really become culture vultures, whether it be around hip hop or even transitioning now into more modern day where, I can personalize the stories where I've been at careers, and essentially come up with an idea that no one's thought about. And then that individual essentially try to take it and run with it. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So try to essentially steal my idea, my thought, or my invention and personalize it to see their career grow. And I'm not a big fan of that.
It's disrespectful. It's disrespectful, and it's actually immoral to be one to do that, man. The biggest thing that you can do is if you get something from somebody else, give that person credit for it, and let it be known that, hey, I didn't come up with this. I got this from somebody else. But that's you have to have something inside of you and some type of values within to be strong enough to acknowledge that. But that's the way that it's supposed to be. That's the way it is supposed to be.
So, but it's so interesting though, BG, if I continue to personalize this particular story or these stories, because you can come up with an idea, right? And then you can have been bitten once, or you've seen someone say, take your idea and kind of run with it and get the credit for it. But then when you see that happen, first time, shame on you. Second time, shame on me. So you kind of promote yourself, and you kind of let people know that, hey, this is my idea. Like, this is something I came up with. Then the story gets flipped, right? To say that you are, it's all about you. Well, understand the history, right? Understand that when I've been humble or when I've been less vocal, others have essentially preyed on that idea, that thought, and become vultures. Whereas now that I'm speaking up and I'm taking the credit for the idea, for the invention or what have you that I've created, then the story gets flipped. You see what I'm saying?
And gets turned into something totally different. You stand the risk of getting wiped out of the story completely.
People that essentially that I like to identify and call as opportunists.
Opportunists, waiting on that opportunity to take something and run with it and make it for their own. Elvis Presley, big time culture vote. You ask a bunch of people and say who was the founder of rock and roll? They'll say Elvis Presley. And Elvis Presley stole all that stuff from, the guys doing blues and doing that down home music in Mississippi and in Tennessee. But he was the one that got on screen. And of course, his look was more favored at the time. So he became the founder of rock and roll as we know it.
We did a history lesson. We could start all the way back. When we were kind of prepping for the show, we talked about the invasion of Egypt, as being an example. We can go all the way to Columbus supposedly finding the United States, America.
On accident.
On accident.
On accident. Nobody ever say that part, but he just stumbled up on it. He thought he was somewhere else.
Culture.
It's crazy. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. It's crazy. But that just goes to the importance. You hit on it. The importance of knowing history, knowing what has gone on before all that, so you don't fall victim or fall fool to just the Kool-Aid that someone is serving you.
But taking the effort to learn
advantage of you,
taking the effort to learn it yourself, because again, I guarantee you, if you survey or sample 100 teens and ask them what's the origins of hip hop, because that was the example we used from the start, I guarantee you over 50% wouldn't even know the origins of hip hop. And they would think that hip hop essentially was being given to them via the radio outlets that they're listening to or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you and I like that example because it's more modern day.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one that you and I are currently both living in, and we are essentially right before our eyes seeing a culture be overtaken by the business mind or the I like to call them the suits at different stations or at different television stations or what have you, or radio stations, the suits that see opportunity and become opportunists in a culture without even trying to understand it, but essentially trying to dictate and maneuver and create what they think is a hip hop culture. And in a lot of ways, that's what becomes the beginning and the end of anything.
The people that or the groups that tend to have the more sustained success and longevity are those groups that are well versed on their history and where they come from. And this conversation is going a lot of different directions, but you say one of the groups that is like the most influential in the world as an ethnic group or as a religious group, or however you want to look at, would be the Jewish community. The Jews were immigrants. They started off as immigrants coming from like the Poland and areas like that, Eastern Europe, come over to America and start off basically from scratch and build their community up to where now, if you start looking at who has the wealth and who has the big companies and things like that, you're going to see some type of Jewish involvement and the way that they look out for their community within itself. You ain't going to do anything. You're not going to do anything to degrade that community as a whole. Why? It's because you can't cause them to waver in where they come from and what they know and what they believe and what they feel is right. Because as a community, they know who they are. So you've got to answer to them. You've got to respect their ground rules when you come into dealing with them, or you're going to have a hard time because they are so profound in these elements and they're together in it. And a lot of it is because they have that reference point in their history. They know where they came from. They know what their descendants had to go through to get them to where that point is, where they are now. And they're going to hold on to that. And so that there's a lesson in being versed in your culture, to having that degree of care and respect for what has come before you.
Well, let me ask you this. You actually just raised a point. I actually want us to talk about this one day, but it really centers around value, right? So self-worth and value. Do you think we understand and what value is and understand self-worth? And the reason I asked you that question, and the reason I really want to, I actually been contemplating on putting together a blog about this, is because in a lot of ways, if you understand your self-worth, then you truly understand your value. Because self-worth is aligning, essentially, when you understand your self-worth, you understand that you're here for a reason and for a purpose and to fulfill a solution, right? And when you can truly grasp that, which I never really grasped that until a year and a half, 2 years ago, maybe, because I think we recite those words, but we don't really understand the true meaning and the characteristic. But I say all that to say this, to bring it back home, not to really get on a tangent, but do we truly value and honor like hip hop culture being our example? Because what you were really saying in your example of when outsiders come in to try to invade or take over another culture, or try to take over an idea, you have the elders that come in and say, no, that's not going to happen. But I kind of sit back and wonder, why would we allow outsiders to come in and kind of take over, using hip hop as our example, to allow the suits to come in and kind of take over and dictate what's considered hip hop or what's not considered hip hop, and kind of leaving out the purity and the integrity and authenticity of it. So could that be because we don't, number one, truly value and understand the self-worth of that culture?
That'd be one thing, because what you value, you really hold on to, and you protect it with everything that you have. So I would say that in certain instances, it is about not really fully understanding that you really got something. You've got something here. It could grow to be so much more if you protect it and cultivate it and preserve it and grow it out the way that you want to grow it out. So you have to really value it. Like you say, you have to really have some understanding of the value of what you really have and what you possess. That's important, because if you don't really value it, you will give it away. It's easier to give away a penny than it is to give away $1. So
people or someone to come take it and you won't even care about it, right? So if somebody breaks into your house and they steal, and this happened to us, but somebody broke into our house and stole a I don't know, a CD that you never listened to, you won't even notice it. But if they still at your favorite item, you're gonna notice that, and that's gonna make you upset. And that's why I kind of take a step back, because during your example that you was giving just a minute ago, I kind of wonder now and question, how much do we really value cultures or anything that we allow to be taken away from us? That's a deep question, because I think it's deep because I don't really believe that a lot of us really understand what self-worth is, and we truly value our self-worth and value ourselves. And I mean, I can sit here and tell you personally that it wasn't until a year and a half, 2 years ago, where I truly understood and grasped what that meant. So even though we may recite it and say that we value hip hop culture, do we really value the hip hop culture, or do we just really like it? The difference between love and lust.
True.
That's really the question that we should be asking ourselves in a lot of ways, is do we lust after something, or do we really love it? And how can you love something that you never even how can you love something when you can't even love yourself first, is essentially what I'm getting at.
Exactly. And you see that in the way that you spend your money, the way that you spend your time, your resources, and all those type of things. That somewhat reflects how, where your value is, what you value, and how much you're willing to give away. Because a lot of times we'll spend money in places that really don't care anything about us. We'll give our time to entities and institutions that really don't care anything about us. Like stores and things in our communities. We're like do the right thing. We're supporting Sal. But Sal ain't never really took the time to understand why Radio Raheem carried that big radio, and how much that meant to him, and how it would, how
Right.
disrespectful it would be to break the radio with the baseball bat. But we've been spending money. You the pizza man, and we've been spending money with you since we got here, since we were born. That type of thing.
Yeah, because we don't know. If you knew better, you would do better. And I think in a lot of ways, we talked about culture vultures, and you really said something that rung a bell with me, and struck a bell with me, when you talked about how other cultures may not allow, or other groups of people may not allow someone to come in and invade some of their traditions. And I kind of wondered, how much do we actually value? Or, you'll have your small pocket of people that do value or understand the self-worth of something. But when that group is a minority, then how does that minority overcome that majority that's in the dark?
Yeah. That's tough.
That's tough. And I kind of want us to talk about, I'm going to let you summarize us, but I kind of do want to talk about, just one of these days, just really get into this whole idea of self-worth and value, because it really struck home with me when I was at home recently on the trip to Alabama, and, I had finally grasped at that point my worth and my value, but then just looking at other people or friends or whomever, and just really just being like, man, I wonder, do they really understand and get this whole idea of self-worth and value? Because for you and I to be so passionate about this topic, culture vultures, then to me, it kind of makes me feel like we kind of understand what our worth is and our value. But for other people that may not be so passionate about this topic, but more concerned with something else, I just kind of wonder at where they fall between understanding their self-worth and their value. You understand?
I got it. And it may just be something as simple as this medium giving people the opportunity to stop and think about it, because we get into our day-to-day swing. Some of us have families and things like that, and really your whole cycle is just centered around going to work, doing what you do, and getting ready for the next day. And all these things are going on around you, and you really have to have a moment to really pause, to take in, what's going on, to have a moment to connect with all of those other forces that are going on in the world. And so it may just be this, what we're doing now by saying it on this podcast, and then, giving people that opportunity to really pause and reflect on some of these things that are really going on. Because in honesty, listening to that Comeback Jack interview and looking at some of the stuff on YouTube really kind of raised my awareness to the whole thing, and saying that really is something that we take as being a minute thing or minute moment in time, but it's really a microcosm when we talk about what's going on in the music business. Is a small reflection of what's going on in all these other areas, like you say, in our workplace and in our communities, and in politics and in civil and things like that. So it's a real thing. But to go further on the contrast of not valuing it, we as a people, a lot of times we have been so forgiving and so hospitable that we'll let people in. We'll take anybody in. We'll give you an opportunity to come in and sit down with us without really checking the person's resume. We'll let you eat down. We'll let you eat at the table with us without really knowing what your motive is. And before we realize what's going on, you got us. You didn't came in, you didn't stole everything, and now you using it as your own. So that's another flip to how some of our things that we should be holding close to us get away from us. And sometimes we may be just a little bit too inviting and too welcoming to some of the people that really have an ulterior motive as well.
That's a good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
All right. So I mean, I'm gonna give a takeaway for both of us to kind of give a takeaway what we want to take away from today's show. But I mean, you mentioned something about Combat Jack's show, and for me, that topic really only amplified what I see or what I've seen for years now. Just from working in different corporate environments or what have you, I've kind of been able to see the vultures, kind of. And it's so funny that you just said it, because I just put two and two together, right? Jay-Z say, "Come here, let me show you how to move in a room full of vultures."
Right.
Culture vultures or work vultures, or what you want to have them. People that essentially just trying to prey off of your ideas and become opportunities. So I'll give a quick takeaway, then I'll let you kind of wrap us up and we can get up out of here. But essentially my takeaway from today's show is along the lines of culture vulture and really bringing awareness to that, and how it's bigger than just hip hop, or how we can use history as multiple examples to really illustrate what we're talking about today. One of the takeaways, and it actually happened while we were talking during this conversation, is value and worth, and really understanding what self-worth is, and that being truly understanding that you were put on this earth to essentially solve a problem. And I say that, and I'm pretty sure that goes over people's heads and they don't really understand what I'm saying. But really, just really think about, you were put on this earth. You are valuable enough. You were put on this earth to solve a problem. And once you understand your value, then you'll appreciate anything that you're doing. So, using culture vultures as our theme and kind of our topic for today's show, when you can understand the value that the hip hop culture or whatever it is that you're playing, when you can understand the value of that, then you'll really be less likely to let other vultures come in and pry that away from you.
Protect your neck. Protect the stuff that matters to you. Protect your culture. Protect your family from people that are praying and waiting for an opportunity to take advantage of you. For you, people that are out there that are entrepreneurial, that are creative and things like that. Protect your product. Everybody will tell you that. Protect your product. Get your idea set up to where when you do present it to someone, you got all the right paperwork and the copyrights and all this kind of stuff in place, so that if anybody was to ever try to use your stuff, you've got a case against them, and maintain ownership of your things, and don't be just so easy to be taken advantage of, be an easy target, and lose out on things that can propel you in your life. So it's been a good talk, man. I've gotten something from this one myself, and we've been talking, and we got something from it. So hopefully everybody out there listening can get something from it as well.
And we kind of went everywhere with it. I mean, but hopefully everybody gets the gist of this particular topic. And essentially, if they come to your job and take your corn on the cob and take a couple kernels off, would that be all right with you? Hell no. Is that the mondo?
I like it.
So that kind of brings us back home. And how can the people reach us?
freelunchpodcast.blogspot.com for blogs and the podcast and a lot of other videos and things that we are giving to you. Instagram, Free Lunch Podcast, and Twitter, Free Lunch Pod C. We look forward to hearing from you and hearing some of your feedback or any ideas that you might have for a future episode. And I promise we won't swagger jack you. We will give you full credit for anything that you deliver.
Speaking of full credit, shout out to Club Monster and D for everything, for what they provided us with thus far. That's the opening music and also the logo. We have any other artists that you listeners want to recommend, let us know, and we'll definitely try to promote what they're doing, and as usual, try to get them a platform to keep this New South movement pushing and going forward. Lastly, always shout out to Afro.com again for interviewing both BG and I. So that article will be available soon.
Yeah.
And for those that are interested, the lyrics to the song that I was reciting are from Devin the Dude and the Snoop D-O-double-G, as well as Andre 3 Stacks. Go check it out. What a job this is. And we out.
Out of here, Free Lunch Podcast.
Pardon me, I'm speaking it awkwardly. Charles Barkley, barking, they ain't biting. I'm getting that green broccoli. Properly giving props to the problem, fulfill prophecy. It gotta be better than that. It gotta be awesome. Obviously, niggas rolling the dice, and this ain't Monopoly. My purpose was to do it on purpose. Fucking apology.